Hello and welcome. As we look around, isn't it interesting to note how many people in positions of power and influence seem odd, seem not quite balanced, seem peculiar, seem quite far removed from what you and I would probably think of as being a good leader. And that doesn't mean to say everyone should be the same. I quite like eccentric, I quite like quirky, but some of these people, they're just unsuited to the role. And what causes that? Well, that's probably the subject of another video. Certainly, personality type, personality traits, background, current situation, childhood, all that stuff can be rolled into one to present some of these leaders who appear to have like big chips on their shoulders, some of them at least, and a sense of they know what's right and everyone else doesn't. And now that they've got some of these positions of power and influence, well, you're going to know about it because they're going to shape the world in their vision, not necessarily our vision, their vision. And what I thought I'd do as a sort of generic is just quote from Marcus Aurelius, or at least an overview of some of the things that he thought were important in terms of leadership. So this is by no means a definitive list, and it is an overview. But as I go through it, consider how what I'm saying relates to, or not, as the case may be, some of the people who you, when you look around and consider those so-called leaders, would find that there'd be a bit of a chasm, a bit of a gap between how they're behaving and what Marcus Aurelius considers to be some of the foundations of good, in fact, great leadership. So in no particular order, and I'll just quote from a handful. Lead by example and virtue. A leader's primary role is to be a model of good character, embodying virtues like wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. So, wisdom. Now, wisdom to me, this isn't Marcus Aurelius, this is me. I think wisdom is being smart enough to realize how little you know. And that understanding opens you up to being curious about other people. What have they got to say? It can help us shine some sunlight on the blind spots that we all have. So wisdom, in my opinion, promotes humility, because it's not saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm all wise and all knowing." It's a self-reflection from which comes this realization that I don't know it all. My goodness, I've studied, I know this, I know that, but being wise is recognizing how little we do actually know. Hence, the openness, the curiosity about other people, the humility. And justice, again, doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is, of course, connected to morals, is, of course, connected to ethics. Do you see moral behaviour? Do you see ethical behaviour? And courage. And that, of course, is the fuel to do the right thing. Courage to make the right decision and brave to carry it out, one could argue, to think of it that way around. How many courageous people do you actually see out there? Or how many expedient people do you see just doing what they need to do to get into positions and then to hang on to these positions? And temperance, well, that can mean many things. I think, yeah, obviously it can be food and booze and all that. But temperance also, in my opinion, is about emotional temperance. It is about the ability, the facility to access a calmness in the moment and not to get needled and not to be vindictive. Then serve the greater good, and not in the way that Hot Fuzz, the movie, would suggest. So it's not that blind obedience to some clannish little society that some people may or may not be involved with and belong to, allegedly. I couldn't possibly comment, but I just did. So it's to ensure the welfare of others. Leaders should act for the common good, not for self-enrichment or personal gain, like trips and freebies, etc. So the enrichment and the welfare of others, this sense that we do need to embrace those people who are vulnerable. Have you seen people not do that recently who you thought might do that? Isn't that interesting? And then promote fairness and competence. So again, he believed, Marcus Aurelius, in promoting competent individuals regardless of social status and upholding principles of fairness. And when people think things are not fair, when they believe that maybe their group or some other group is being treated unfairly, then this can activate in the brain the same circuitry as disgust. We find it disgusting. So we do not like things that seem unfair. Unfair to a smaller group, unfair to a vulnerable group or individual, unfair because, again, there is this bias because the ideology is a little bit different from what that leader and that echo chamber thinks people should be thinking. And this idea about social status, I also believe, is important because what that's really saying is a meritocracy. That everyone should have a goal. No one should be pushed up above anyone else, irrespective of the situation. But everyone should have access to the same capacity, the same tools, the same opportunities as everyone else. So what do you think of that? Do you recognize any of these individuals who don't seem to practice what Marcus Aurelius suggests? And do you think that if some of them did, we might find ourselves in a far better situation?